Mr. Gatsby, I'd like to know.
Exactly who are you, anyhow?
No time.
Can't you see who this guy is? With his house, his parties, and his fancy clothes.
I love you much.
We were born different from you.
It's in our blood.
I go back to
Nothing that you do or dream up can ever change that.
Hey guys, Lucas here again for another movie review. Today is for the adaptation of the classic F. Scott Fitzgerald novel, The Great Gatsby, written and directed by Baz Luhrmann and starring Leonardo DiCaprio, Joel Edgerton, Tobey Maguire, and Carey Mulligan. As I'm sure most of you know, The Great Gatsby is a classic book that pretty much every high school student has had to read, and I haven't read it yet, but I'll probably have to read it next year, so this movie did come in handy. But I didn't read the book, like I said, so I didn't really know what the story was about. But what I got from this movie, I don't know how accurate it is to the book, they have this billionaire played by Leonardo DiCaprio, Jay Gatsby, who's kind of like this mysterious figure. He throws these like insanely humongous parties and that people just come to. You're not invited to them. You just show up, and he's just the talk of the town. But there's a lot of mystery surrounding him. And then the movie starts off with Tobey Maguire's character, Nick Carraway, I believe, and he's the main character, and you see the story through his eyes. And he moves to New York and starts working on Wall Street. He gets invited to one of his houses. He's the only one to really, I think, ever get an invitation ever. And it's basically how Leonardo DiCaprio's Gatsby uses Tobey Maguire's character to get him reintroduced with his old flame, Daisy, played by Carey Mulligan, because they are cousins. So it's basically the dynamic between those three and Carey Mulligan's wife, played by Joel Edgerton, and just all this tension and mystery and backstories just kind of come out in this big epic story. Going into this movie, even though I have no connection to the source material at all, I was very nervous because Baz Luhrmann, as you know, directed Romeo and Juliet, the other one with Leo, and Moulin Rouge. And I haven't seen Romeo and Juliet, but I cannot stand Moulin Rouge. I really do not like that in-your-face, over-the-top, super vibrant type of shooting if there's no substance behind it, and that's what I felt with Moulin Rouge. I hate that movie, and this looked like it was just Moulin Rouge in the Great Gatsby version. And while that is very present in this movie, it didn't overshadow it. I will say Baz Luhrmann gets great performances out of his actors. This is a great ensemble cast. Tobey Maguire is the main character. I liked him. At first it took me a few minutes to actually kind of like him, or just like his performance, because I felt like he was trying really hard, but it wasn't coming off. So it takes him a good 25 minutes or so to really fall into the role. But after that, I thought he was very good. And Joel Edgerton, which I'm glad to see him getting some more roles like this, really sinks his teeth into this one as the douchey husband to Daisy's character, and he's just a despicable guy. Carey Mulligan's good as Daisy. I'll get to her in a minute. I want to talk about her a little bit later. But really the standout is Leonardo DiCaprio's Gatsby, and Leonardo just so good at being so charming yet mysterious at the same time. And judging from what I've heard from other people, he was a perfect Gatsby in their eyes as well. I found for the most part the story pretty compelling. It made me want to read the book. I felt that there was enough twists and turns. Unfortunately, I did read a few spoilers before I went in, so I think I would have been a little bit more surprised if I went in completely clean. But for the most part, I thought that the characters were really interesting. I felt that the situations that were being developed were also very interesting. And the story just kept me in it through most of it. It did have some pacing problems. Again, I'll get to that later. But to me, the story, for the most part, I think, was pretty involving. And visually, this movie is say what you will about him, and I'll be the one to say that I'm not a fan of his most of the time. But Baz Luhrmann has an incredible vision, incredible shooting style that's very unique to him, and I thought for this movie, for most of it, it worked. The party scenes are insane. I've never wanted to go to a party so bad. It was like the world's like coolest, best bar mitzvah ever. These vibrant colors, these really sweeping shots, almost dreamlike landscapes. It was just amazing, and I could tell, I didn't see the movie in 3D, but I could tell that it was a movie that was shot in 3D and was purposely thought of in mind when making it, and I'm sure the 3D in the movie just adds to the vibrance and colors and the just magnificence of what's going on. It helped tell the story, and even when the story was in its slower moments, visually it's just so stimulating that you just wanted to see what was happening. The visual style of this movie usually I can't stand, but the Moulin Rouge, it didn't help that I didn't like any of the characters, and it was just style over substance, so it was just all this style with no human or interesting people to really latch onto, and this one, the characters are a lot better, and it actually brings you into the world of this 20s, this lavish lifestyle, and it actually helped the story progress rather than detract it like I feel like some of his other movies do. The movie has its fair share of problems, though, but I do think it deserves a little bit more recognition than it is getting right now. I know a lot of people have problems with the style, but to me, I really couldn't stand the first 20 minutes of the movie for that reason. I just thought it was going to be like Moulin Rouge Part 2, especially in the first 20 minutes where it's all this glamorous visuals, these really loud, obnoxious characters, just blazing soundtrack, just sound coming from everywhere, and you're just like, oh my god, am I going to have to shoot myself before this movie is done? And fortunately, the acting, the story picks up, and the in-your-face style goes away temporarily, or at least is not as bad as it was in the first 20 minutes, but I could see people tempted to walk out for the first few minutes of this movie. The film is about 2.5 hours long, and it definitely feels that way. I did see this movie last night, though, around 9, so I was tired when I was watching it, because it is, like I said, a long movie, but I still think even if I saw it in the morning or afternoon, I would have had problems with its pacing. I feel like I said, the first 20 minutes are pretty hard to maintain, and points in the middle and near the end where I felt like it was going, and I could see where it was going, I wanted to wrap up. And there's points where they repeat, like there's a thing where Gatsby is revealing stuff to Tobey Maguire's character, and then he repeats the exact same thing 30 minutes later. I'm like, did you not remember the scene that you did about 30 minutes ago? They repeat like the same backstory twice. Could have cut 5 minutes out of the movie there. A few other scenes I felt could have been cut out, and it would have been a lot more tight movie. This is the most novel-like movie adaptation I've ever seen, and that's good in a way and very bad in a way, because this movie beat you in the head with symbolism. I could probably write like a thesis essay on this movie without having to read the book, because you could tell that it's so crammed with literary elements in here, and I could tell that the book probably has the same things, otherwise they wouldn't repeat it as much, but you could tell, like, there's so much symbolism in this movie that they repeat and jam into your head. One, I won't really want to spoil it, but I'll just say one involves a green light, one involves, you know, the separation of houses on the bay, the other side of the bay, and the other includes the eyes, like the glasses, which I think is even on the cover of some books, and you could just tell that they tried to really hammer in the symbolism and metaphoric meanings from the book in this movie to a fault, because they did it, each one, at least 5 times, and I'm like, I got it the first time, Baz Luhrmann. I'm not going to write an essay on this till next year. I'll watch it next year, but right now I don't need all this repeated to me. And while this movie has characters that you're not supposed to like, I feel that the 2 main characters that I like personally, Tobey Maguire and Gatsby, besides them, and even within the context of their relationship, I felt like there should have been more emotional resonance. I cared about them, but I really cared about Gatsby the most just because he was the most interesting, and I liked Tobey Maguire's character, but I felt like some scenes should have impacted me more than they did, and emotionally, I didn't think it was completely effective. Overall, this movie is a lot better than I expected it would be. I thought it could have been a complete disaster. I think this is a really love it or hate it movie. The people I saw it with are on sides of both fences. But I'm in the middle. I did like this movie. I think it has moments of greatness and storytelling. There's an amazing scene in confrontation with pretty much all these characters in one room in some hotel room in New York City, and I thought that was a great scene. The acting is great. Visually, the movie is amazing, even though it has some really bad CGI and green screen at some points. I kind of forgot to mention that. But overall, it's a movie that suffers from a lack of emotional resonance and is long and does really beat you in the head with the symbolism. But I still think it's a solid movie, and it's definitely worth seeing on the big screen just for the visuals alone. So I'm going to give The Great Gatsby 3.5 stars out of 5. You guys have read the book. What did you thought of this movie? Did you like it or hate it? Was it very loyal to the book? Did it change in a lot of scenes? I've heard it's pretty loyal, but I want to know what you guys think. What do you think of Leonardo DiCaprio? And thanks for watching, and please subscribe. See you guys later.
It had gone beyond everything.
Something ought to be done about a fella like that. My life has got to be like this. It's got to keep going on.